Imagine waking up one day and realizing that your country has intentionally erased huge parts of its own past. Old cities gone, traditions abandoned, borders redrawn, even the way people think, speak, and remember themselves quietly rewritten. Not because of war, not because of invasion, but by choice. Most nations fight desperately to protect their history. Museums, monuments, national holidays, all designed to remind people where they came from. But this country did the opposite. It looked at its own past and said, "This will hold us back." So it deleted it. And here is the shocking part. It worked. Today, this country is one of the most stable, prosperous, and admired places on Earth. But underneath that success lies a decision so radical that if it failed, it could have destroyed the nation completely. So why would any country do this? Who decided what parts of history deserved to survive and what parts had to disappear? And most importantly, what was the hidden cost of pressing the reset button on an entire national identity? To understand this, we need to go back to a moment when everything could have gone very wrong. Decades ago, this nation was in trouble, deep trouble. It was poor, internally divided, surrounded by larger, more powerful neighbors. Its people did not trust each other. Different languages, religions, and cultures collided daily, often violently. Riots were not rare. They were expected. Leaders feared that if the country continued on its current path, it would not survive another generation. At that moment, the government faced a terrifying question. Do we honor our past and risk repeating its mistakes, or do we sacrifice memory itself to build something new? They chose the second option, quietly at first. The erasure did not begin with bulldozers or burning books. That would have caused outrage. Instead, it began with education. School textbooks were rewritten. Certain events were shortened into footnotes. Others were framed differently. Not lies exactly, but selective memory. Old heroes were replaced with new ones. Ancient rivalries were softened. Painful chapters were described as necessary transitions. Children grew up learning a cleaner, simpler version of their country, and they never realized what was missing. Next came language. Language is memory. Change the words people use, and you slowly change how they think. Certain dialects were discouraged. A standardized language was promoted aggressively. Official communication shifted. At first, it sounded practical. Efficiency, unity, global competitiveness. But something else happened. Generations stopped speaking the way their grandparents did. Stories became harder to tell. Jokes stopped making sense. And with that, a quiet disconnect formed between the past and the present. Then came the physical erasure. Entire neighborhoods disappeared. Old buildings, markets, and streets that had existed for centuries were labeled unsafe, inefficient, or outdated. They were replaced with clean lines, order, symmetry. The new cities were impressive, functional, modern. But if you searched for the soul of the old city, you would not find it, because it had been paved over. Critics spoke up. They warned that this was dangerous, that a nation without memory becomes fragile, that people eventually ask questions. But the results were hard to argue with. Crime dropped. Economic growth exploded. Foreign investors poured in. The country transformed itself faster than anyone thought possible. From the outside, it looked like a miracle. From the inside, something else was happening. People began to feel successful, but oddly disconnected. They had money, security, opportunity, but when asked who they were, many struggled to answer without repeating official slogans. Identity became efficient, streamlined, approved. The past felt distant, almost fictional, and that was exactly the point. Here is where the story takes a darker turn. Because erasing history doesn't destroy it, it only buries it. And buried things have a habit of resurfacing. Years later, young people began asking uncomfortable questions.
Why do our grandparents avoid certain topics? Why do old photos look so different from what we learned in school? Why do banned books keep reappearing online? The internet changed everything. What the government could once control through textbooks and television was now being challenged by digital archives, leaked documents, and forgotten footage. A generation raised on order suddenly encountered chaos, and they wanted answers. The government responded carefully, not with force, but with narrative. They acknowledged complexity. They encouraged context. They warned against romanticizing the past. Again, not lies, but control. Because once you admit too much, the entire foundation begins to crack. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The country succeeded because it erased history at the exact right moment. Too early, and people would rebel. Too late, and divisions would be permanent. Timing was everything. But success doesn't mean harmless. There's a cost to living in a nation designed for efficiency rather than memory. Creativity becomes cautious. Expression becomes calculated. Rebellion feels pointless because the system works. People are free, but only within invisible boundaries. Most accept this trade-off. Some do not. And this leads to the biggest question of all. Was this genius, or was this a disaster delayed? Because stability built on selective memory is strong, but not invincible. History has a way of demanding repayment. Other countries are watching closely. Some are already trying to copy parts of this model. Standardized culture, controlled narratives, economic growth first, identity later. But what they miss is this. You can erase history only once. After that, people remember that it was erased. And that knowledge changes everything. So, when you walk through a perfectly clean city, when everything works, when nothing feels out of place, ask yourself this. What used to be here? Who decided it should disappear? And what happens when people decide they want it back? Because the most dangerous thing a nation can erase is not its past. It's the ability to question its future. If you enjoyed this kind of story, where the surface looks perfect but the truth underneath is far more complicated, make sure to stay with this channel. Because the world is full of places that look successful, and even more full of secrets that explain why.